welcome. We are so excited to have you here today. We're going to have a really good time talking about the money wound. And don't cringe when I say we're going to have a good time, because we're going to have a really good time. My intention and my goal for you is to hopefully get you to walk away today with a new insight, some new perspectives, for you to be completely open and receptive to exploring new and powerful ways that you can continue to expand on creating abundance in every area of your life. So, I want to talk about this story about money and money wounding, um, kind of from a little bit of a different perspective than I've ever talked about it before. So, I want to just say, uh, you know, you've probably heard people talk about their money story. It's not an uncommon thing that you'll see in the world of thought leadership. There's a lot of people talking about, I was broke and then I figured out whatever this mysterious secret was, and then poof, voila, I made millions of dollars. And I certainly will tell you that I personally have a very similar story. I definitely was broke, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But before we talk about money stories, and I share with you a little bit about my money story, I want to just say this. If you are really mightily struggling with money, and that's not uncommon, you're not alone, and it's going to get better. It might not get better tomorrow. You might hear information about consciously manifesting, about money, about abundance, and you might feel suspicion or doubt. You might roll your eyes. You might feel a little jaded. I get it. I totally get it. And I'm going to tell you, it's going to get better. It's going to get better incrementally. It's going to get better for some of you instantly, but it is going to get better. And I want to encourage you, if you're finding yourself in a space where you really feel like, wow, my whole financial bottom is just seemingly a dark hole, I want to encourage you with the hope and the promise that it's going to get better. It's going to get better. So I want to invite you to walk into the information that we talk about today with that being kind of your baseline. I want to invite you to walk into the information I'm going to share with you today with this quiet mantra that says it's going to get better. And it will. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my story, because I want you just to be present to how my story feels for you, and for you to look at how perhaps some of the symptoms that I experienced as somebody who struggled mightily for years might have already been showing up in your life, and that the symptoms might be rooted in something you don't expect. So I could tell you, I've been bankrupt. I've been over $80,000 in debt, which that was a huge amount for me at that time. It's a huge amount, period, at the end, but at that time it was like an insurmountable amount of debt. I have lost a house to foreclosure. I've had my car repossessed, and some of you have heard my story of running after the repo man with my car in the middle of the night with my newborn baby in my arms and my flimsy nursing gown on, because I had to stop him because he was driving off with my car seat and my wallet. I have robbed Peter to pay Paul for more decades than I even want to count at this point. And I can tell you it's different for me now. It's better for me now. And it did not get better instantly. It got better incrementally, 1% a day. And what I really want to talk about today is not so much my story, because we all have similar stories. What I want to talk to you about is some of the symptoms that I had that led to the manifestation of my story that I didn't realize were symptoms of my financial challenge until much later when I look back on my story. So I'll say that the very first symptom that I had of struggling with money, and let me tell you guys, I come from an extremely wealthy family. There's no reason for me to have been broke, if you will, right? But I was. And so the very first symptom, I would say, of my financial consciousness and my struggles with money actually happened for me in grade school. I was an early adopter on the anxiety bandwagon. I had horrible social anxiety as a kid. I was bullied. I never felt like I fit in. I was always the kid. My last name was Pope. as a kid. Think about what rhymes with Pope. There were so many terrible songs that the kids sang about me. And I couldn't wait to get out of school. And I couldn't wait to get out into the world. School was hell for me. And that was probably my very first red flag about struggling with the money wound. And some of you may relate to that. When I started dating as a young adult, I had a tendency to fall in love with people's potentials and to be wildly codependent and to basically lead men by their nostrils into their evolution. It usually didn't stick, and I ended up being burned out, exhausted, and also usually paying all the bills. Some of you may relate to that. That same pattern carried into my marriage, and I got married at a very early age. My first few years of my marriage, I was going to school. I got 2 degrees in 3 years. I worked 60 hours a week in addition to going to school, putting both myself and my husband through school. He stayed on the couch for most of that time because he couldn't work because he was too tired. He took 2 classes. I took 24 hours and I paid all the bills. Some of you might relate to that. That was actually one of the root problems when our marriage came apart. And when our marriage came apart, I got full-time support of our kids. Full-time support, meaning I had them all the time, 24/7, and I was responsible for feeding them all and clothing them all and paying all the bills because I never got a penny of child support. That was also a symptom of my money wound. And that wounding wasn't about the things that we're told it's about. It wasn't because I wasn't working hard. I was working very hard. It wasn't because I wasn't smart with my money. I had to be very smart with my money. I had a finite amount and I had to figure out how to get all those bills paid and not get kicked out of my house every month because I was renting, right? Or I couldn't pay my mortgage, and then I did get kicked out when I lost my house. I want to tell you that the money wound doesn't necessarily have anything to do with money. It has everything to do with your self-worth and a couple of other things we're going to talk about today. I also want to tell you, as I said, it's going to get better. But learning how to heal the money wound is kind of like riding a bike. So when you put a kid on a bike, anybody ever put a kid on a bike? Very few kids, if any, when they get on the bike can instantly ride a bike, right? It's a process. You got to have training wheels and you got to learn how to pedal. And then eventually, you lift the training wheels up a little bit and up a little bit. And then you take the training wheels off, right? And then you're running behind the kid. And then eventually, they're riding and you're like running behind, sort of, psychically holding them up. And they fall off. It's guaranteed they're going to fall off. I had one kid that would literally would run into walls and trash cans and all kinds of things because he never went slow, still doesn't go slow. But they get back on and eventually they learn. And the thing that's so interesting to learn, to remember, is it's not just that they learn how to ride the bike. If you grow up and then you decide you're going to continue to ride the bike, you still kind of take that same risk. You still fall off your bike, even as a grown-up sometimes. I literally just did that 2 weeks ago. And if you start to get professional with it, like if you start to get a carbon bike and you want to race and you want to ride, I live where there's a lot of hills. There's always people riding their really fancy, like $10,000 bikes. You're going to fall off on those bikes too. But you keep getting back up and you keep riding and you keep gaining speed and you keep gaining momentum. Healing the money wound is just like riding a bike. The thing that's so important to understand is that it's not like you're going to learn advanced skills on the bike other than maybe learning to spin. You might get a more expensive bike, but the right act of riding the bike stays the same. And so part of what we're going to be talking about today might feel like it's repeat information. It might be stuff you've heard before. But the thing is, every time you hear it, you're hearing it because it's really important. It's repeating itself, or you might hear me repeating information because it's important. Because the core principles of creating abundance, of aligning with abundance, are the same. They're the same. And every time you get back on that bike and you start to up level and you start to expand and you start to get better and better at it, every time you move up a level, you have to recalibrate. And you're not going to recalibrate with something more complicated, more fancy, more complex. You're going to continue to come back to recalibrating with the basics. And so if it feels like you have to go back to basics, that's actually good. That's normal and that's healthy. And that's part of what happens as we go through the cycle of learning how to ride the bike that is the money wheel, and to go through that journey of healing that money wound and staying on that course, that journey Hopefully you'll get to where you can spin and go really fast up and down the hills, getting to that journey of being in the flow of that abundance. If you're having to start over, if you're having to relearn, if you're having to go back to basics, it's not that you screwed up. It's that you're just recalibrating. You always have to go back and recalibrating. And so I'm excited to have you here, and I'm excited to really use this time to open up your mind, to plant the seeds of either new information and helping you prepare your mind for healing the money wound, or to plant the seeds of information so that you can be ready to learn something new or hear something that you've heard before, but maybe from a different lens or a different perspective, a different point of view that's going to give you a whole new way of learning to heal the money wound and to ride your bike. All right, let's get started. Healing the money wound. So, a couple people have said, well, what is the money wound? I'll say it's an injury to your psyche. Okay. And then of course it manifests into our physical world. And it's an injury that we all carry that happens as a result of allowing ourselves to be valued by money. And whether we realize it or not, we're being valued by our money. Our society is valuing us by how much money we have or don't have. And we oftentimes have internalized that metric of value. And there's a very deep relationship between our self-worth and our finances and our value. I will say that I was recently introduced on a webinar as an interior designer. I tried not to fall out of my seat laughing because that is not what I am, but hopefully you know me as the author of Understanding Human Design and a bunch of other books that are up here on the top of the slide. I'm a multiple best-selling author. I have been an EFT practitioner since 2000. I was one of the very first people trained to use EFT. I've been a life coach since 1978. I am one of Ra Uruhu's original students, one of the very few left on the planet. I've been teaching human design since 1999. I am a Quantum University PhD candidate and also a guest lecturer. I am a TEDx presenter. You can find my TED Talk. If you go to TED.com, you can find my TED Talk on burnout. I am the host of the Quantum Revolution podcast and a couple of others, micro podcasts on top of that. If I was going to distill the information about how to create down into a very short lesson, what I would tell you is that your thoughts plus your beliefs plus your emotions create non-manifest, so quantum fields, non-manifest fields of information. So your thoughts, your beliefs, plus your emotions create non-manifest fields of information. Our actions, when the timing is right, when there's the right alignment, convert this quantum information into formation. It's literally, that's it. This is, if you were going to get drilled down to the core of creativity, this is it. Your thoughts, beliefs, and emotions create fields of information that eventually manifest into formation, usually as a result of some kind of action, when the timing is right, when the alignment is right. As simple as it is, we all know it's not always that easy, right? So we're going to talk today about what's really going on if you're struggling to turn that field of information that is money, your abundance, your sufficiency into formation in a way that feels abundant and juicy for you. So we're going to talk about human design, the mechanics of money, and we have to do this in the context of evolution, because for many of us, the reason why we're struggling with money is because we are evolutionary agents. We're literally, I would challenge you and say that every single one of you on this call, you are standing between two worlds in your relationship with money. You're standing in the old world, the world that maybe you grew up in, the world that your parents hoped that you would take leadership in, and you're standing in a new world where money isn't quite what it used to be. And finding a way to walk between those two worlds is really essential as we continue to build a new course for humanity in the way in which we navigate value and money on the world. So let's talk first about money and the archetype of money and the importance of meaning. And let's start first. I want to start first with the basic mechanics of manifesting. Now, as I said in the very beginning, you're going to hear some information. If you've been following me for a while, you're going to hear some information today you've heard before. And I really want to invite you to listen to this information with beginner's mind. Listen to this information with the understanding that every time you up level, every time you walk around that spiral of your own growth and expansion, you're going to hit a point where you have to go back and recalibrate. And that recalibration happens with the basics. And that if you're going, yeah, I know this, but you're still not creating a manifested form of a manifested field of information, if you're not creating what you want in your life, it's probably not because of something complicated. It's probably because you've up leveled and now you have to go back and recalibrate with the basics. So I'm going to break down for you the parts of the creative equation. I'm going to break down for you what happens on a quantum level when we manifest, when we create. So I'm going to tell you the different parts, and then we're going to explore how do we put those different parts together and consciously create what we want. So the very first part of this equation is what we'll call the unmanifest reality, or sometimes we call it the quantum field. Okay, you are right now, this very second, sitting in a field of infinite possibility, infinite potential, the unmanifest reality. And there are so many options that you are swimming in right now. You have no idea. You have no idea what's actually available to you. Most of us, partly because our human brain just can't even process that many options. We have so many options, right? So you're sitting in this field of unlimited options. The second part of the creative equation is what we'll call the mental and the emotional body. This is where we store our memories of everything that's happened to us, everything that's been said to us. This is where we store our ancestral programming. This is where we store the belief systems from our families, from our lineage. This is what we call in human design your conditioning. So you have this whole filter, if you will, in your energy field called your conditioning that contains all of the experiences that you've had that make you who you are, and all of your ancestral lineage that also makes you who you are. The next part of the creative equation is called the subtle body. You have an aura, an energy template, and that energy template is basically holding together your physical world. So this is where, if you're going to use homeopathy or essential oils or do any kind of energy work, this is usually where an energy practitioner is working, what the level that they're working on. They're clearing out your energy template. If you go see a good psychic, they're going to be able to look at this energy field and they're going to be able to see like, oh, you're about to manifest your soulmate. Or they can look at your energy field and say, oh, it looks like you're just getting over a cold, because this template is basically holding your physical reality in place. Last but not least, we have the manifested reality. That's your life right now. Everything in your field right now is your manifested reality. Your manifested reality is basically options that you chose out of the quantum field, and you brought them into your physical, tangible world. The real question is, why did you choose what you chose? Why is whatever is in your field, why is this in your field right now? Okay, part of why that whatever you chose is in your field right now is because you have a filter. That filter is the story you tell about who you are. That's all the conditioning, your ancestral lineage, your genetic lineage, everything you've experienced, plus your human design. All of these pieces are in this filter. And this filter is basically scanning the infinite possibilities available to you in the quantum field, and then it's picking the options that fit the story you're telling. And those options then drop into your manifested reality. So you may have heard the expression, I create my own reality. Well, that's true. Your story, the story you tell about who you are, the story you tell about the world, creates your own reality. And if you're creating your own reality, then, and you don't like your reality, or you want more of what you love in your reality, then the really big place where you have to begin exploring is not what degree do I need to get, how much harder do I need to work, what kind of job do I need to have, who do I need to be associated with to make more money. What you have to be asking yourself is, who is the you that's creating my reality? Who am I? Who am I really? And the reality of it is, you are the space in between your manifestations. The real you is not what you manifest. That's temporary. You're a frequency of energy. And that frequency of energy, that is consciousness, is actually who you are. And it flows in between the manifest reality and that space that is the expansive nature of who you truly are is actually what's creating. It's the rocket fuel that's manifesting what you want in your life. Now, I like to think that the physical world and how we understand the physical world is represented usually first in art and science. And that as consciousness shifts and evolves, and it's evolving, then our understanding of the physical world and our understanding of science and art changes. In the late 1800s, we had a new science burst onto the scene called quantum physics. Quantum physicists studied the building blocks of matter, the small particles that make up the material world, atomic particles, if you will. And what quantum physicists discovered was that the atomic particles, the parts of the material world, the things that make up matter, those particles don't act the way that matter behaves. In fact, what quantum physicists found is that these little zipping, zooming, moving quantum particles can either be measured through their movement or they can have their location measured. So you can only measure movement of a quantum particle or a location, but you can never measure both at the same time. So moving quantum particles are potential. So when I say you're sitting in a field of infinite possibilities, really, if you want to visualize that, you're literally sitting in a field of zipping, moving, zooming quantum particles right now. And scientists can measure those movements. But here's what happens when they try to locate a particle. When a quantum physicist tries to go, okay, where is this quantum particle that's moving? I know it's moving this fast in this direction. I'm going to predict that it's going to be over here. When a quantum scientist predicts that it's going to be in a place and they try to locate it, it shows up where they predict it to be, which is okay and fine until you have two different quantum physicists looking at it, trying to measure its location in the same space, and they have two different expectations, and you see it in two different places. Because location, where a quantum particle shows up, is dependent on expectation. So location, when we see a quantum particle, it drops out of movement and into manifested form. And that manifestation, where it's located, is determined by expectation. The meanings that we have about the parts of our story, that filter that is determining which of those moving, zipping, zooming particles you're bringing into your physical world, that you're dropping out of potential into location, the meanings that you have about the parts of your story are determining what you make manifest. The meanings you have about those parts are determined by your conditioning field. They're going to be influenced by your human design and your life and soul purpose. And if you want to create what you want, you have to have meanings that are in alignment with your desires. So I want to stop here. And I wanted you to just right now, quickly, I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Pick up your pen or paper, or in the chat. You can do this in the chat if you're, online. I want you just to write down for 30 seconds everything that comes to mind when you think about money. That can be how you feel about money, what you believe about money, how much money you have, whatever it is for you. I want you just to write down 30 seconds, everything you think of when you think about money. Everything you think of when you think about money. All right. So if you will, just post in the chat. We've got dirty, not enough, power, hard to come by, freedom, means to survive, thrive, manipulation, beautiful, lack, struggle, freedom, always out of reach, luxury, plenty, dangerous. I'm just reading fast here. Limited, requires work, confusing, can do good, lifestyle, travel, gifts, gross, hard, constriction, thrill, wish I had more, fun, joy, luxury, birthright, goes away easy, greed, grounding. You can hear that even in this group of people, we have a whole lot of different meanings about money, right? But what is money? Money is just an archetype. It's neutral, right? It's a thing we exchange as a way to measure that the value that we use in that exchange. That's really all it is, right? But the meanings that we give it are influencing our experience of it. Those meanings are in your filter. And the meanings that you have in that filter are influencing which of the possibilities, the potentials of money, and there are lots of potentials of money, it's influencing how we're experiencing money on the physical plane in our lives right now. So I want you just to know that, and this is, I want to share this with you. I don't have the slides for this, but this is so powerful. When you saw that slide with the dollar bills on it, here's what happened. Your brain created a storm of light. That storm of light caused your brain to produce neurotransmitters. Those neurotransmitters in turn caused your body to produce an emotional response, which in turn calibrated your heart either into a state of coherence or incoherence, depending on the meanings you held about money. Stop for just a second, because one of the things we forget is our power. So stop for just a second and acknowledge that in that nanosecond, when you saw those dollar bills, you turned light, photons, that's how the brain works. You turned light into neurotransmitters, a measurable chemical that I could take you into the lab and measure. You created matter out of light with your body. That's how powerful you are. You have the ability to transform light into matter. Don't forget that you're that powerful. And you have ultimately, as you learn more, the ability to become sovereign over that process, to reclaim your control over your ability to turn light into matter. All right, deep breath. We're going to keep changing topics. Remember, my goal here for you is to prepare your brain to receive information that is going to continue to transform your perception about what you believe you're capable of, who you are, and your story about your power and about your money. So let's talk a little bit about money and evolution. So I'm going to, again, remember this is basics, but I want to bring you back to this information because this is so powerful, especially for those of you who are really fed up with the current collective story about money. To tell the next part of our story, we have to go back to the scientific revolution, which actually ended with the life of Sir Isaac Newton, who created Newtonian physics. That's the physics most of us studied in high school. What's so powerful about understanding the scientific revolution is, remember I said when consciousness shifts, our understanding of the world changes, our understanding of science and art changes. Well, part of what happened with the scientific revolution is consciousness shifted, and then our understanding of the material world shifted, right? The scientific revolution basically said, hey guys, we've been giving all of our power away to the king and to the church or whoever. And now it's time for us to recalibrate and reclaim or establish our own power over what we create in the world. We have to eliminate suspicion. We have to take back control over what we choose to create. And the scientific revolution really heralded the beginning of a new way of creating in the world. Simultaneously, in case you don't know, the human design chart actually changed at the end of the scientific revolution. In 1781, the chart itself changed. We went from being a 7-centered to a 9-centered being. And one of the most important things that we saw emerge in this change is we saw the emergence of the ego or the will center, which I'll talk about later in this presentation. So Newtonian physics really brought us some core ideas that many of us are really grappling with right now. At the end of the scientific revolution, we began to believe in finite amounts and solutions. began to believe in fixed laws with probable, possible, and predictable results. We started to embrace the idea of formulas, reasoning, logic, nature, natural law, and we became obsessed with certainty, right? We have to be certain, and science makes us certain. By the way, I'm not against science. Again, as you probably remember from the beginning of my presentation, I'm actually a guest lecturer at Quantum University, big fan of science, love science. But science is not the only way of knowing. It is a way of knowing. It is an important way of knowing if you're going to take a pill or a drug or use a modality for healing, but it's not the only way of knowing. The currency of the materialistic era. So the materialistic era is really the form of consciousness that we adopted and we used at the end of the scientific revolution. It was responsible for building things like school systems, government systems, anything that has the word system in it, healthcare system, is the result of materialistic thinking and formulaic thinking. The economy that we live in is a system, and it's a system that's rooted in the idea that the metric of value has to be material, right? We have to understand value materialistically. And of course, the metric of that is money. We use in our culture collectively the idea that value and the material world is measured by either numbers, and in the economy, it's measured by money. Now, evolution, which, by the way, the end story of evolution from materialism is that survival of the fittest, a very destructive doctrine that actually Darwin himself did not believe in, that has been a big part of, I would say, the problem in our economic system. And if you want to learn more about that and hear more about that, you might be interested in listening to my webinar that's called Capitalism Isn't the Problem. But in this particular program, we're talking about evolution, and evolution is the imperative of consciousness. We are designed to grow and to evolve. And evolution might actually be maybe a little bit more deliberate than what we were taught in school. Maybe it's not about survival of the fittest. Maybe there's a template of consciousness that is bringing into form, information, the manifestation of our thoughts and our beliefs and our energy. So, as I said, in the late 1800s, we had the emergence of a brand new science called quantum physics that marked the beginning of what we'll call the quantum era. The quantum era, which we are knee deep in the middle of, by the way, we're still bringing this era in, really started taking root in the 1920s. We had the beginning of what's called the New Thought movement. We saw thought leaders such as Ernest Holmes, Edgar Cayce, Madame Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, Maria Montessori. Actually, Buckminster Fuller during this time had a near-death experience that created his whole body of work. We really began to embrace the idea that your thoughts, expectations, right? Quantum physicists have expectations that determines what manifests, right? So we began to really embrace the idea that, our thoughts, our expectations create our reality. We learned that we're all connected to each other by virtue of a quantum field, that we can create and impact the world non-locally, meaning we can do things and change the world without having to move things, without having to move the mud, that we can become fundamentally creative, meaning we can take quantum leaps over what we think is possible and experience the miraculous, especially if we believe we can. We began to interpret value through the lens of well-being, and we began to embrace the idea of change, uncertainty, and potential. The currency of this new age, and every single one of you is an ambassador for this quantum era. The currency of this new era is well-being, not money. Well-being. How good is your life? How juicy is it? How connected are you in your physical expression of your life to the things that are the priorities of your heart? How much wellness do you have? How much access to resources do you have? How much support do you have? How much community do you have? These are the new metrics of success and the new metrics of our economy in the quantum era. And I would challenge you to say that most, if not all of you, are really longing for this. And you'd like to have this without the artifact of money being tied to it. And I do think we're going to get there. I don't think we're there yet. I think we're in between these two worlds right now. And I do want to just acknowledge you that if you have a dream of creating a world that's rooted in well-being and it calls you and it's, you long for it and you feel it and you taste it and you sense it, that you're feeling it and sensing it and tasting it because you are an evolutionary agent. You are a mutant, if you will, serving on the leading edge of expansion. And the mutation that you bring is part of the evolution of shifting our world to this new worldview. So when we create well-being, we be well, we live the life we desire. We embrace the idea of freedom, sustainability, alignment without hustle, vitality. And of course, our driver becomes not how can I take my fair share? How can I hoard what because I'm afraid there won't be enough, or how can I be the fittest that survives? We instead create from a place of, wow, I have everything I need. How can I share the extra of what I have? How can I share my well-being with the world? How can I create a world that expands upon the idea of well-being? And of course, because of that, we seek to leave with this act that we create, this embodiment of well-being that is us. We seek to leave our indelible vibration on the planet. And by the way, again, just to remind you, each and every one of you is already doing that. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. Now, abundance is actually our birthright. And I don't say this lightly because I want to be really clear that as I say that, I'm saying this as an extraordinarily privileged person. And I want to be really clear that this isn't just something somebody in certain spaces on the planet can just claim and proclaim. If you are living in places where the collective consciousness is embodying lack in very scary and detrimental ways, I could say, well, abundance is your birthright. Just change your thoughts. You'll change your reality. It's not that simple. And for those of us who have the potential to make it more easy, our embodying this birthright creates the energy field, a field of information that's manifested that has the potential to expand. And I do believe that ultimately part of our end goal, all of us, is to leave this planet in a state where every single sentient being on this planet is living from their abundance birthright. When we look at the human design chart, what we see is that we're literally designed for abundance. So I want to just say right now, I'm going to be going through parts of the chart. And I want to just really clarify that I'm looking at the chart as a blueprint for the human story. And I don't want you to get too panicked about looking at your chart and going, well, I don't have that gate. We all have all of the chart. We all have all of the chart. You will have certain themes that are defined or colored in on your chart, which means that's a theme that's a part of your soul curriculum. It's part of a theme that's going to keep repeating itself because you're here to learn about that. You're here to share that with the world. If you have a gate undefined or white in your chart, it doesn't mean you don't have it. It means that you can experience this energy in a variety of different ways, which means ultimately you have freedom and choice over how you use this energy, and you have a depth of wisdom about this energy because you understand it from many different perspectives and angles, but we all have it. And we are literally all designed for abundance. No one is designed to be broke. That's not in the chart. So I'm going to break down for you some of the places where abundance shows up in the chart, but I want to just share with you what I would say is the most important part of our birthright to abundance that's in the chart, and that's this. Your abundance is directly tied to your authentic alignment, meaning the more you live your life true to who you are designed to be, true to your highest expression of your potential, the more you are relentlessly authentic, the more you are honest about who you are and what you want, and you are taking actions in your life to cultivate that without apology, the more you live from that place, the more you'll experience your abundance. And it has nothing to do with the gates and everything to do with you being the person you were born to be, you fulfilling that role. And what the chart shows us is that the gate 55, the gate of faith, which in traditional human design is actually called the gate of abundance, is the regulator for our emotional frequencies. And emotional frequencies create, and I'll show you how in just a minute. And that emotional frequency is regulated by the degree of faith that you have in your abundance. In other words, the more that you believe you can have, the more you can have. Unwavering faith. The second thing that we see in the chart through the channel 14.2, the channel of progress in quantum human design, the second thing that we see is that you are designed to create abundance through responding. Okay, you don't have to figure it out. You don't have to make sure that you're on the cutting edge of the next new idea and this is your idea. And if you don't manifest it, somebody else is going to take this idea and you're not going to get credit for it, even though it was your idea. You are designed to be in response to what life presents to you, and through following the things that feel good and right for you, you are designed to be abundant. And that abundance, by the way, is activated through receptivity in the gate 2, meaning you are designed to respond to the things that bring you the resources. And what really regulates whether we have it or not is our receptivity to it. How much are we willing to allow ourselves to be supported, to believe that we are worthy of being supported? That's a big deal. The next place that we see abundance is in the channel 2145. This is called the channel of sustainable resources in quantum human design. What this says is that your abundance is tied to your self-worth. Your abundance is tied to your value. Your abundance is tied to your ego. And I'm going to talk a little bit more after this about what does that really mean. But without, when we look at this channel is not about hoarding, taking, being in control, seizing, usurping other people's stuff. This channel is about understanding your own enoughness, and from the overflow of your own enoughness, sharing your enoughness with others. This is actually a channel that says, when I have more than enough, I share who I am and what I have. So let's talk a little bit about money and faith. As I said, the gate 55 is the regulator of the emotional frequency in the solar plexus. It is the gate of faith. It is the regulator of our abundance. We're in a really interesting shift. And this is actually why we decided to give away the book, The Quantum Human. If you're interested in understanding the shift, you can read about it in my book, The Quantum Human, because the chart is about to go through another change. We are getting ready to go through another shift in the chart, just like we did at the end of the scientific revolution. Now, part of what's happening in this shift is that we are moving out of creating in a reactive way and learning how to create deliberately, how to consciously harness frequencies as part of our creative capacity. So what's really going on is we're learning to not let fear run the show. We're learning to stop creating out of fear and to start creating from a place of faith, to start allowing ourselves to align with the energy of enoughness, the energy of sufficiency, the energy of abundance. And through that experience of holding that frequency of energy, we observe the outer world, and then we respond regardless of type. This is just using the word respond as a general verb. We then respond in ways that align with our type, with whatever shows up. So we're interacting with the material world in the way that we're designed to. And that material world is showing us the next right step to manifesting the fulfillment of our abundance. So we're moving out of fear and using fear as a driver and a motivator and part of our creativity to consciously harnessing faith, belief in new possibilities, and holding and sustaining that energy and long enough, with enough faith, with enough trust that it's going to show up even if we can't see the evidence of it. Now, emotional energy from the emotional solar plexus is a vibrational frequency. It operates in waves, and some of you have your own wave depending on how your solar plexus is defined. When we look at this emotional wave, by the way, if you have an open emotional solar plexus, you still experience emotional vibrations. It's just you don't have the same variability in it as somebody who has it defined, but we all have emotional frequencies. Okay? Emotional energy fluctuates and travels in waves. So, if we were going to measure emotional energy, and it's an energy, it's moving, it's a wave, it'll look like this. Now, when we talk about how to create what you want in your life, one of the things we talk about is the law of focused success. We know that this is from quantum physics, right? What you focus on, what you look for, that's the expectation piece. Where you put your energy and attention is where you get results. The more you focus on it, the more you hold that note, that frequency of creativity, the more you get the results you're looking for. Now, when we're looking at emotional energy, and we're remembering that emotional energy fluctuates, what I really want you to take away, and this is true again for all of you, whether you're emotionally defined or emotionally open, is that it's not the day-to-day fluctuation in your emotional energy that's going to determine what you create. I'm really saying that because I want to give you permission to be gentle with yourself if you have a bad day. You're going to have bad days. You might even have bad months. You might even have a bad year or two. And that doesn't mean you've unmanifested everything. It just means that your attention to the baseline frequency, which is the frequency, sort of the midline of all the emotional waving that you're doing, it's the baseline that creates, not the fluctuation. Here's why this is important to understand, because our goal in terms of constantly and sustaining an abundant frequency is not about freaking out about the daily or the cyclical fluctuations. It's about remembering that you got to keep working to bring yourself back to baseline. Okay. Why is that important? On the left-hand side, we have what's called a low frequency wave. Okay, meaning if you look at this wave on the left-hand side, it has a low frequency of undulation over a specified period of time. Okay, that low part of the low frequency is meaning it's got low undulations. It doesn't move that much over a specified frequency of time. On the right-hand side, if you look at the right-hand side image, you'll see what's called a high frequency wave. It's a high frequency wave because there's a high frequency of movement over a specified period of time. When we are lifting, elevating, holding higher frequencies of energy, the baseline is still important, but here's what's so interesting to note. If you look at this low frequency wave, because it's moving slower, right? You have more time spent in the troughs, more time spent in the high, but really more time spent in the trough. Usually what happens is when we get down into that low part of that wave, and this is again true for all of us, because our attention and because I think we have a lot of judgment about not feeling good, because our attention and energy creates, when we don't feel good on that emotion, in our emotional energy, we tend to focus on it, right? We tend to put our energy on it. We put attention on it. And what happens is when we're on the low end of that wave and we're putting attention on it, we're actually deepening the trough and we're slowing down the wave. And we're making it more and more challenging to bring ourselves back to baseline. Remember that in the high frequency wave, you still have movement, but because the movement is so quick, you're not as aware of the lows and the highs, and you're actually much more aware of the baseline. So it's really important to understand that part of what's happening with our creative energy is that we're learning how to regulate our emotional frequency. We're learning how to consciously stay dialed into bringing ourselves to baseline. And that really means not judging ourselves when we're not on baseline, being gentle and sweet with ourselves, being present to whatever might be either causing the lower expression of the wave or just the natural nature of our wave-like energy if we have definition. And that our job now becomes not to sit there and analyze and interpret, why am I low in my wave? What's happening? Why do I feel so crappy? But to instead say, okay, what do I need to do to bring myself back to baseline? I'm not saying deny. I'm not saying be toxically positive. I am saying to engage in a regular, honest exploration about how do I bring myself back to baseline? Because learning how to sustain this note, if you will, this frequency of the baseline, to constantly be in this state of calibrating this wave, this creative pattern so that you're staying in the baseline, is probably the single most important and powerful thing you can do for yourself in terms of healing the money wound and creating more wealth and abundance in your life. The other reason why this is important is that this wave, this emotional frequency, calibrates your heart. So remember when we looked at the picture of money and I said, here's your story about money, and you guys posted stuff in the chat. And I said, you took photons. In that moment, you took photons and you created neurotransmitters because you're super powerful and you can turn light into matter. Those thoughts created neurotransmitters, which created emotions, which in turn calibrated your heart, kind of like this. This is actually the mechanics of what we call heart resonance. When you are bringing yourself back to baseline, you're calibrating the heart chakra. And that is, by the way, the will center and the G center. That chakra split in 1781 into the will and the G. Both of those centers are associated with the heart. In your heart, you have a magnetic resonance field. That magnetic resonance field is part of attracting into your experience, your physical world, things that match your emotional frequency. When you calibrate that heart center, the magnetic monopole, in a high frequency way, when you're working to keep yourself at baseline, what you attract into your life matches that baseline frequency. If your emotions are out of whack and you're not calibrating yourself and you're not taking good care of your emotional resonance, you're going to be potentially calibrating your heart to be out of coherence. And what you're going to pull into your life, I got to get out of here just to show you this because I want to see you face to face because this is so important. What you're pulling into your life is not failure. You're not failing. What you're pulling into your life is a mirror for you to see for yourself. Where are you stopping yourself short? Where do you need to calibrate that baseline frequency so that what you're creating is a reflection of your value and your heart? You're not failing. You're helping yourself heal if what you're seeing isn't matching what you want. Please be gentle with yourself, okay? You're not failing. So here's just a question that I want you to write down. Just write this down. I don't want you to necessarily answer this right now, but this is a question I really want you to sit with in an exploratory way. I really want you to be present to this question because the answer to this question is going to potentially really support you in bringing yourself back to baseline. What new habits will you create to maintain your vibrational frequency? All right, let's talk about money and lovability and self-worth. And I'm going to zip through this little piece because I know we're getting short on time, but I don't want to leave without helping you understand what is the mirror of your life showing you so that you can start looking at where do you need to maybe clean up parts of your story so that what you're manifesting is a genuine, true, authentic expression of the brilliance and the beauty and the power and of who you are, who you were born to be. When we look at the G center and we look at the gates of the G center is the center for love and direction. In quantum human design, we call it the calibration center. What the G center shows us is that we are designed to attract into our experiences that reflect back to us our love for ourselves, experiences that help us embody our power, experiences that support us in being relentlessly authentic in the expression of who we are and the purpose of that we were born into, experiences that help us regain sovereignty over our own story and liberating us from the pain and the stories of the past so that we're not living out past trauma in our life, experiences that help us trust in source and know that we are supported by spirit, God, universe, whatever you want to call it, in deep, ineffable ways, experiences that help us move into greater states of vitality and embodiment and joy in the physicality of the soul and the body, experiences that support us in learning how to keep ourselves more and more open and more receptive to all the good that is our birthright, and experiences that help us grow in compassion and expand upon what we're able to share in the world. If your experiences aren't reflecting this back to you, it's because you, in your infinite wisdom about who you really are showing yourself, hey, You keep dating the same person in a different body and they're not treating you the way you deserve to be treated. You're going to keep bringing this into your life over and over again because you need to learn that you deserve better, that you're worth more. It's not that you screwed up, that you failed, that you're broken. It's that you're helping yourself heal by virtue of by virtue of what's showing up in your life. The will center, which is the center that is often associated most in human design with money, is also the center for your value. Okay? When it's defined, it works to rest. Oftentimes, if it's defined, we have issues with showing up in our will, in our ego, in that individual definition of who we are. We oftentimes hesitate to take leadership, to be in our egos, because if we do and we get criticized or we get attacked or people judge us, we tend to feel like the heart of who we are has been judged. If we have an open will center, we oftentimes are engaged in all kinds of activities to try to prove our value to others. And really the effect is kind of the same. When we question our value, it tends to impact what we create on the material world. It tends to impact our abundance and our resources and what we have. The goal, by the way, of the will center is not to be the best or the first. The goal of the will center is to stay sustainable, to keep a steady stream of abundance going so that you always have enough. And ultimately, so that you have more than enough, so that you have some to share. That's really the goal. If we go and we look at the gates of the will center and we look at the highest expression of these gates, just like we did with the heart center, with the G center, what we see is that, again, looking at the cosmic mirror, that what the will center tells us is that our value is not derived from how much money do I have, what bra size am I, what size is my waist, how many years of education have I had, how much money do I have in the bank. Our value is not determined by money or numbers. You're valuable because you exist, period, the end. What the will center tells us is that our value can be healed when we serve the world from a place of integrity, when we value ourselves enough to create with integrity, and that integrity becomes immutable. Meaning we don't compromise on who we are and our own value as part of our creative process. We set good boundaries. We nurture ourselves. We make sure we have enough so that from our own enoughness, we have more to share. We see through the gate 51 that part of our value is derived from being in service to our higher purpose or by serving on a spiritual level. That we can heal our self-worth through spiritual service. The gate 21 tells us that when we regulate ourselves and we sustain ourselves, when we live and create from a place of enoughness, that enoughness then becomes something we can share with others. And the gate 40 tells us that we can heal the will, or we can heal our sense of value by being of service or being participants in community. The more evolved purpose of this will center is to align us with sustainability, community, truth, and value. The more we understand the unique and vital and irreplaceable role that each and every one of us play in the cosmic plan, the more we understand that role and embody it and live it and serve from it. And that's not martyrdom, by the way. Martyrdom is not sustainable. That means you give in a sustainable way. You serve in a sustainable way. The more we can live in that place and stand in that value, the more we create. The more enoughness we embody, the more enoughness we manifest and have to share with others. There are protocols that I use in some of my programs that I walk people through with these 4 gates that help them work on healing the self-worth piece. And there are actions and concrete steps you can take to heal this will center piece. That's a whole nother class. I'll do that class sometime soon too. So the changing definition of value, our next topic, is my favorite definition of value. I'm obsessed with my CSA produce box. We are living in a world that's changing. We're shifting the way we value ourselves so that we can better value each other. One of the biggest things that's up for all of us right now is Uranus is in Taurus. It's been in Taurus since March of 2019. It will remain in Taurus until April 2026. We are in the middle of a cosmic restructuring in our relationship with money and value. The last time Uranus was in Taurus, was when we had the Dust Bowl, we had World War II, we had the rise of fascism, we had the Holocaust, we had the Great Depression. We are literally in a mirror of that same time about 100 years ago. It's what's happening is that for many of us, it's triggering ancestral memories, and it's giving us actually an invitation for us to clear our genetic lineage around value. The thing that's important to understand is much of what we think about money comes from old ways of thinking, formulaic material ways of thinking that is rooted in duality, have not, good, bad, masculine, feminine, Democratic, Republican. And these dualistic ways of thinking, which we're getting ready to clear and get rid of, are causing us to embody aspects of lack consciousness. So anytime we start to drop into dualistic thinking instead of abundant, unlimited, infinite potential kinds of thinking, we start to manifest these extreme limiting ideas like lack versus abundance, have versus have not, them versus us, male versus female, conservative versus liberal, filling your duality here. The more we can heal these rifts, the more we can stop thinking there's this or that, and the more we can embrace, and this is what the Gate 55 teaches us, by the way, that there are an infinite number of ways that our intentions and desires and dreams can be fulfilled. We don't have to figure it out. We just have to hold the energy for it and pay attention to what shows up and keep our heart open. The more we can do this, the more we can heal the money wound. The more we can heal that rift in duality, the more we can heal ourselves. And ultimately, it's not just about us. I said you're here as leading edge agents of a new world, of a quantum era. You will also actually heal the world. Take a deep breath and acknowledge that for a minute. You're here to heal the world through your own journey. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. When we look at the story that you're choosing, the story that you're using to manifest money in your life, it's hard sometimes to tease out what are all the parts of that story. If you take a human design chart and throw it into a blender and blend it up with developmental psychology and astrology and just a deep, rich understanding of what are the parts of the human story, what you would come out with, if I took all these archetypes, types, centers, profiles, the lines, the gates, the channels, if I took all the archetypes that make up the human design story and I blend them in with psychology, what I come up with are really the idea that there are 9 basic archetypes that have to be functioning at a high level for you to fulfill the potential of your chart, for you to fulfill the potential of your money story. If these 9 core archetypes, these aspects are not functioning at their highest level, you are probably operating out of what I'll call protective identities, and you're probably stuck in self-sabotage. You've got to clear these 9 resiliency keys. So these 9 core aspects are at the root of healing, maturity, health, and resiliency. As I said, they have to function at the highest level. If you're going to get out of the struggle in your chart, they are the root of most pain and trauma. And they are oftentimes at the root of our own self-sabotage. Remember how I said you're always recalibrating? If you're up leveling and you're struggling with this, you're not failing, you're not broken, you're not stuck, you're not blocked, you're recalibrating. And I will tell you, I personally have to go back and recalibrate these keys all the time. It's just life. It's just what we have to do to keep ourselves from continuing to get sucked back into the conditioning field of the collective. It's what you need to master to stay undomesticated, so you can be your wild and free self, right? So I'm going to read through these. So I'm going to go through these really fast because I don't want your brain to kick in. I want you to just feel, when I read these resiliency keys, I want you to feel them. And I want you to just intuitively give yourself a number, 0 being low, 10 being high. If you were going to rank yourself on a scale with each one of these resiliency keys, where would you rank yourself? The first one is lovability. Can you be loved and accepted for who you are? The second one is empowerment. You feel like you have control or influence over your life. The next one is courage. Does fear keep you from fulfilling your joy? The next one is decisiveness. Do you know how to choose what's right for you? The next one is emotional wisdom. Does your emotional energy keep you from acting deliberately? And if you have an open solar plexus, do you compromise what you want to keep others happy? Self-trust is the next one. Do you trust yourself? Vitality is the next one. The opposite of vitality, by the way, is burnout. Are you fully expressing your vitality and your energy? Authenticity is the next one. Do you feel free to really be who you are? And last but not least, self-worth. Do you really know how valuable you are? Right, here's just a quick summary. I hope you got some information that shifted your perspective. I hope you internalized through this journey today with me a new perspective on your abundance, your potential for wealth. I hope that you found some seeds in the information that we shared with you today that will help you really activate your abundance in every way possible. And I hope that you remember you are a unique and vital part of the cosmic plan. This whole planet is what it is because you're on it. And you are here as an evolutionary agent to further the expansion of abundance on this planet. So the work you do for yourself is also the work you do for the world. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here and for being willing to accept the challenge to continue to explore how do we keep growing on this beautiful planet. Thank you all for joining us. Be well. Take care.